break. Welcome back from your break. We hope that it was a good one, and albeit virtual, that the networking was, it looked like it was popping in the chat for me. And we also hope that you would have taken the opportunity to visit the booths of our sponsors. Again, the 39th annual ICAC Caribbean Conference is fully powered this year by Ernst & Young as well as CPA Canada. And I am absolutely excited to chat with our next panel. It's actually the first panel of the conference. I don't know, young people excite me. We're also speaking about the current generation and, the generation that's right behind. So the topic is a new generation of accountants. And we have amongst us Crystal Howell. Crystal is an auditor with 17 years of internal audit experience at Sagicor, and external, she would have been with Ernst & Young before. So Crystal looks young, but has that experience behind her. And she would have noted that she is now a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Barbados. Colin Yifeng, if you were looking to study accounting and become part of the profession in Trinidad and Tobago, chances are you would have come across Colin. Colin is the vice principal and the co-director of studies of the Students Accountancy Center, SAC, in Trinidad and Tobago, and that, of course, is an institution that has long been established. Colin, I need to recognize your dad, Eddie Yufeng, who would have been the founder of that school. And of course, Colin interacts with students, future accountants, on a day-to-day basis. And of course, as you would appreciate, Colin is based in Trinidad and Tobago. Crystal is based in Barbados. And Cherise Ward. Cherise is the current CFO, head of operations, Barbados Family Planning Association. Nope, she's not. Cherise is an auditor who has an interest in fraud and investigation, as her ultimate career goal is to become a forensic accountant. Cherise is based out of Jamaica, and our paths would have first crossed on the UWI's Mona campus, where Cherise was at that time earning her first degree, and she would have also been the president of the Association of Aspiring Accountants, and our co-sponsor, CPA Canada, would have interacted closely with Cherise as well as that association. So all of that to say, they're all dynamic professionals in their own right, and we have very much a Caribbean gathering here. I want to start off by talking a little bit about what hit our accounting students and students across the region very early on in the pandemic. And that was a move from traditional to blended learning. I'd like to get a feel as to what transpires now. And Colin, can you let us know how the school handled that and what currently exists?
Hi, everyone. Morning. I must admit that when we were going through the pandemic, I now started back in 2020. It was a bit of a shock to not just the students, but to all of us as tuition providers in Trinidad as well, having to transition from that face-to-face that we've all been accustomed to from primary school level, go right up to tertiary, to now online learning or blended learning. But I must say that after about a 5-6 month teething period, not just myself, but also the rest of my tutors in my institution, actually got a lot familiarized ourselves with and we're very comfortable with the whole blended learning aspect of it. That even though it doesn't have that quite personal touch as face to face as seeing that student engaging with them face to face. But what it does allow for is it allows students to be able to see how to be able to answer the questions on that computerized format that they have to do on the exam itself anyhow. It allowed for quicker and more alternative response times in terms of whether I answer them on WhatsApp, Zoom, email, more modes of communication to be able to clarify any sorts of problems or issues that may have arisen for those students. So I found that the blended learning was something that we were a bit scared of initially, but then after, it was something that I guess I could see implementing into our institution probably going forward.
Yeah, and that was my question to you. Do you see that approach perhaps sticking around into the future now?
I think so, because that blended approach has a lot of advantages, especially from the perspective of showing students how to be able to approach the respective key and core area topics and putting what is upstairs here into the platform format that you have to enter into an exam day. Because a lot of students, they're normally very they're very confused as what to do because they're accustomed with Excel, they're accustomed with Word, but the platform that they have to enter is not quite like that. So by having us adopt this blended approach, they're very accustomed with what to do now. So I think it's something that could be adapted into our skill set going forward.
Gotcha. And Crystal and Cherise, can you just perhaps touch on what's happening in your island as related to blended learning in general? Oh,
Okay, so
Crystal,
in Jamaica, okay.
sure.
So in Jamaica, when it had the pandemic started, classes were immediately stopped. For the rest of that term, it happened in March 2020. Went on that break, and then we had resumed online, strict online, for the rest of the academic year. Coming into the new or the current academic year started in September 2021, there was a blended approach for some students, where some students were at home on some days and some were in classes on some days, just to give everyone that opportunity to still benefit from the physical, because some persons learn better the new learning styles and the blended as well. But currently, since January 2022, we have gone to resume full face-to-face classes.
And in Barbados, we've had similar, and I will speak more so from being a part-time lecturer with the University of the West Indies Open Campus, because I would not have had the transition that some persons would have had. I went straight into doing the online teaching. And I found the differences that persons have not picked up on is having to be more dynamic in your teaching approach. There's no longer the face-to-face where you can interact and get the kind of feedback you normally would if you were in a classroom setting. And the online can create a sense of isolation, even as we're experiencing right now. We're not having the benefit of interacting with the audience to be able to feed off of your energy. Then you have to bring that energy with the online session to be able to keep persons interested, especially for topics like accounting, where we can unfortunately get a bit dry. But you have to bring more examples. You have to find ways to draw persons in. I would make sure that I call on persons specifically and get them to engage regularly. Make sure that you're having persons feedback to you if they understand the material, and bringing as many real life examples and discussions into the learning environment as possible. Because if you rely on the traditional methods that would have been used previously, you end up losing a lot of persons and them falling through the cracks. And especially at the tertiary level, they don't have to be there. So if your engagement has not pivoted to be able to suit the new environment, this is where you may lose a lot of the next generation that is interested in the field.
There I am talking, and the thing that we've heard for the last 2 years, you're on mute. My apologies. I was referring to the statistics that Dr. Ram shared in his own presentation, and there were some concerning statistics as related to math and English offering at the CSEC and CAPE levels. And it'll be interesting to see what transpires this year, how the kids settle down into this environment. But studying was one thing. We also had to deal with hybrid working. Even now I spend 3 days at home thereabouts and 2 days in the office. How has that impacted the profession and the current generation? There was some statistics I came across, and I'll share those with you. A 2022 survey that was US based, off of the Asana platform, showed more Gen Z workers were reporting feelings of burnout than other age groups. A 2021 survey of British workers showed 80% of Gen Z respondents reported feeling more burned out since the pandemic, compared to an average of 73% across all age groups. And Crystal, I'll actually like you to comment on this first, because I read at first with concern that somewhere during the pandemic you suffered a little bit of a work-life balance. I know you wear many hats, so you may have found some artistic ways to deal with that. But tell us as well about your experience having to grapple with this new environment.
Well, in the beginning, because I am naturally introverted, I actually enjoyed the working from home because it felt like when you're in the office, you're always playing catch up, and there's never enough time to do all the things that your job demands of you. But working from home, not having to commute as small as we are, I know Jamaica and Trinidad probably giving me looks, but our traffic sometimes makes it difficult to be able to get to work, even though you're just technically 5 minutes away. You're taking half an hour to an hour to actually get to work. And especially my colleagues in Trinidad, they were very grateful to be able to work from home and save on that commute and either catch up on projects or actually work on other things in their personal lives. But eventually the monotony, because when you live on your own and you don't have anyone else to interact with, and the only thing you do is to wake up, work, go back to sleep, and repeat, that monotony created a disengagement from reality that eventually led to you feeling, because after 9 months of doing that continuously, you begin to feel like there is no end in sight to this holding on feeling. And many times we as accountants, we ignore because we can still function, and most of us are very good at that because the work is still getting done, the deadlines are still being met, we're functioning, but inside we are actually dying, and we feel as though the exhaustion that we are going through is something that you just catch up on the weekend with the sleep and you'll be fine, and months later you're still not fine. And being able to understand that you have to get your mental health checks in, reaching out to professionals who can help you, is very important. And having a support system even at work where persons give you the space to be able to do these things privately. I would share mine openly because I want persons to understand that these mechanisms are there and they won't have to suffer alone, especially in this profession. The number of persons who have come to me to say that they have suffered a stroke or they're dealing with grief or they collapsed at work, it is mind-blowing how persons are not handling their mental health in such a highly stressful environment. We as accountants and auditors, we've been asked to pivot in ways that we have not had to do before, and we're not, I can say with certainty that many of the persons I interact with are not handling it adequately because they feel as though the demands don't give them the time to address these situations. But I think it is critical, if you want to put your best foot forward, that you address your mental health concerns. Do not ignore it or think that you'll be able to deal with it later, because it catches up with you in ways that makes it very difficult to repair after the fact. We all know about preventative controls versus detect and correct. And Yet in our own personal lives, we don't apply those philosophies. We wait until the stroke happens or the heart attack or the mental breakdown and then try to address what could be years of damage. So I want to really encourage not just the younger generation, because I think the younger generation has it a bit more, they're more in touch with those things. But I found the older generation tends to ignore it and think that they'll be fine, and they really are not. They're not handling it as well as they think they are, and it manifests in ways that impact their colleagues, their families, and everyone else. So I definitely would like to encourage everyone to incorporate that in their own personal lives and their workplaces if possible.
Thank you very much, Crystal. And you've been very open with your own story. And, kudos for sharing. You can only hope that someone else can benefit and learn from the experience. And Colin, I saw you kind of shaking your head there while Crystal was commenting. Any thoughts?
Yeah, she definitely hit the head of the nail on a lot of the points made there. Um, I believe not just in our country, but I believe it's a worldwide thing. I believe what is a large contributor to that whole increase in stress and wellness going down is that when before the pandemic, when we were at work, we were at work. When we're home, there was a bit of a divide. We know, okay, once we leave work there. And when we're home, we could switch off. We have a release, we have an escape. But when we're at home, whilst it sounds good, traffic, we don't have to meet people we don't want to see. But the bad thing about when everything comes home now is that you're kind of working a little bit more than you should beyond the call that is expected. You don't know your own limits, and so and as she said, whilst you may not know your limits, or you know your limits, but because people depend on you, rely on you, you have to set that example and show, okay, if I persevere, then you all can as well. So based on how our based on how the older generation kind of groomed us, that's how we kind of follow as well. So a lot of the points that she said, I definitely hit the head of the nail for me at least. Whilst I wasn't too keen on the whole working from home too much, I think one of the best things about it so far is that sometimes when we're working and we're progressing with our education, our careers, we kind of forget that not just us, we know we're getting older, we feel it in our knees, our backs, but our family at home, they're not getting any younger as well. So in a way, we do get to spend that little bit more time with them as well, because you never know what the future may hold. So even though I didn't see that as one of the potential benefits of working from home, now I guess I could reflect on the fact that's one of the better things about it. I get to see my dad a little more, my sister a little more, my other family. It worked out a little bit better.
Good stuff. Thank you so much for that. Cherise, what's been your experience like, or the Jamaican experience on a whole?
Okay, my personal experience is that I've actually enjoyed working from home. I love the hybrid work space that we have now, where on some days we are in office and some days we are at home. Unfortunately, we had to adjust how we approach our audits. We have now taken up desk audits from time to time, and we've done more IT audits in terms of analytics, so forth. And I think we were benefiting from that in terms of data analytics, bringing that more into our audit procedures. But for me personally, I like being able to control my own schedules somewhat. So for me, I would get up quite early, the same time I'd get up to leave. But instead, I'll just start working. I'll start working. I get some good amount of work done. Usually I was ahead of my schedule because I was working all the time. But I gave myself breaks. So get up early, get some work done, stop, have breakfast, work again, make myself some lunch, work again, have dinner, and work again before going to bed. And in other instances, I was able to, manage that personal errands and work. And so therefore, I thought my mental health was, good, because I said, okay, I have control. I know when what needs to be done and the deadline, and I just plan my schedule. I think I've been actually a bit more intentional on going out um, since the pandemic. Very funny, but on weekends, I actually try to plan weekends for me to come out of the house. Since I am going to be in the house for most of the week working, on weekends, I actually be quite intentional and making plans to come out of the house and do things. I found, new beaches, new rivers, new places to go, and it's just been, I think it's been okay for me.
Mhm. Thank you so much for sharing your various perspectives, and I'm loving the openness that we have in this conversation. Um, Others across the world have not dealt with this transition well. We are seeing what is now being dubbed the Great Resignation. It's a thing. Um, and because this is a young audience, I would share from Bloomberg Business this week that the lyrics of Beyonce's latest track, which is called Break My Soul, speaks to the millions of Americans who have left their jobs over the past year looking for better opportunities with unemployment at a record low. In April, 4.4 million workers quit their jobs in the US, even as fears of recession grow. And if I'm permitted to, on this very serious accounting conference, quote the lyrics of Beyonce's song, now I just fell in love and I just quit my job. I'm going to find new drive. Dams, they work me so damn hard. Work by 9, then off past 5. And they work my nerves. That's why I can't sleep at night. Um, I don't know, a little bit of a concerning reality for persons elsewhere. Are we seeing that in the region, or are we just sort of, getting that sort of check on the real need to balance who we are?
At first, I didn't think we would see it in the region, but then you started to see the evidence of it in Barbados for sure. There was a Barbados Today article that came out about concerns about the shortage of tourism workers, and most persons would know tourism is one of our biggest employment sectors, and yet they're struggling to find workers. The reality is, again, as I mentioned, young persons are dealing with these things in a much different way. That extra time that persons had during the pandemic, some of them found things that they were quite passionate about. And the idea of giving up that time that they were spending working on their passion projects to go back to an environment which some of them did not find to be the best, they would rather quit and pursue these passion projects and make it on their own than go back to that environment where they have to give up something that they love. And it's all about knowing yourself and being confident about what it is that you want in life. I am an auditor, yes, but as you mentioned, Renata, I am very passionate about my artwork, for example. And if I did not have a very hungry mortgage, I probably would have joined the Great Resignation and explored that to its fullest intent. But there's a number of persons who have started small businesses and they are thriving. They have learned how to be able to manage their money a bit better because that information is becoming more readily available. There's less constraints on their time and their demands, and they feel as though they're managing their lifestyles a bit better and being able to do the things they value, which is spending time with family and spending time with friends, and yet have enough to sustain themselves. Because as the young people would say, the biggest flex is not necessarily having a big house, big car, and big job, but about having the freedom to do the things that you enjoy in life. So those markers that would have been traditional expressions of success has been redefined. So they have no issue resigning from a 6-figure job if it means that they get to do the things that they love. And even more concerning than the Great Resignation is quiet quitting, which employers have to be very wary of that, where you have persons, because they feel as though they've been forced back into a full work in the office and situation, and they've lost that, but they're not in a position to quit because of financial circumstances. They're now doing the bare minimum, and this has always existed, So it's not as though it's a new concept. It's just that it has become so widespread that they've coined the term quiet quitting. And employers need to be very cognizant of and sensitive to what has been happening with their employees, because you don't want a situation where your best employees are leaving and the ones that are left back are doing the very bare minimum, because this has an impact on your quality of products and services that keep you sustained and competitive. If your employees are not giving of their best, your products and services cannot be their best. So ignoring that or continuing to use the methods that may have worked in the past, as opposed to trying to be a more people-centric environment and focusing on how you can create real, not checkbox, because I'm very wary of people putting checkbox things in place to say they satisfy their employees, but real impactful ways that you connect with people and help them to feel secure and safe in the environments that they work in.
Any other comments from anyone?
For me, I think every cloud has that silver lining. I have seen young persons and older persons have pulled on that creativity string that they thought they didn't have, but they realize that it's there, and they have now found new ways of generating income for themselves. Persons who have were laid off, persons who have gotten salary cuts, because I at one point had experienced that at my previous employment. Um, but now the norm is to have more than one streams of income, just in case anything should happen. So even if you weren't cut from your job, persons have taken that initiative to ensure that just in case that this might happen, I already have a second stream of income to supplement that transition phases when I get back to a full-time job. And I think that definitely is a good thing for this generation and a good outlook on life overall, to just ensure that a 9 to 5 cannot be your full compass of life, that you must have your own passions pursuing, hopefully one that generates a second source of income, as well as just keeping it balanced, that you are somebody out of work, and no matter how much you have given into work, there must be something there for yourself, just in case that any day, just like persons have experienced, you have job cuts and persons don't know what to do with themselves, but all they've been doing is work. So I think it's just a new lease on life, really.
And Colin, you're dealing with persons who chances are their students are also working, they're studying, so they have a double load on themselves. How are they coping? Have you seen any difference during the pandemic compared to the years before?
I think it's a bit more mentally straining on them now during these pandemic times compared to before. Some of them would have had to experience layoffs, whether their own family or themselves. They may even have to branch off into avenues that they would have never considered before, or what maybe they would have considered somewhat lower than what their expectations were of themselves. But um, I just find that these are really, really trying times for the student body who have to both work and study.
Mhm.
And I wish that I could offer some sort of conclusive advice of how to press forward. But the whole thing about it is that I've never been through a pandemic, so I'm literally walking through those untested waters just like them. So giving them any sort of advice comes more like, oh, it sounds more like I'm just quoting something off a book for them so they feel nice. But all I could tell them is that at least during these through all these rough times, they don't last forever. And after all of these rough, tough journeys, there's always a better, brighter path ahead. But it really has been tough on many people in these times because of the pandemic.
Understood. And, our president, David Simpson, at his opening remarks, mentioned that, there's so much more to accounting than just, the figures. So we've moved beyond the numbers. We're seeing your role as strategic advisors. There's a focus on building relationships and understanding your client's business, embracing the tech. What was your definition of the new gen accountant? What does that person look like? And in 2022, what are they bringing to the table?
Um, when I think about the modern accountant, I do take aspects of what they already expect out of us. They expect us to be financially competent, so technically competent.
Mhm.
They expect us to be ethical people in the end. We must be able to know or decipher right from wrong. And I believe that the future accountant, not within 1 year's time, but I guess hopefully over a 10-year time, that we should be thinking about being sustainably competent as well. We need to think about the environment, climate change, all of that. It's not just about us in the present, but we have to make sure as accountants that we put things in place for the future of the accountancy profession. So they too, just like how we are right now, the movers and shakers of our profession, that we leave something good or at least better in place for them to put their footmark into the future.
Got it. Cherise?
Right. The traditional rules have changed a lot actually. We have new technologies, in place to perform the traditional bookkeeping role of an accountant. So now what we are faced with is just being innovative and being analytical with these numbers. We are faced with being planners, commenting on future plans of the company, understanding where they plan to go and how this may impact their risk. For example, I'm an auditor and I look at risk management. So we have to just shift a little, from the traditional role to advisors, really. I'm personally enjoying it a bit. I've done a little bit of project management at my previous employment, just to, as an auditor, I was an auditor. I'm being asked to step in with project management and being asked to comment on future plans in terms of internal auditing, risk management, and so forth. So it is definitely a good thing, I think, and I think persons should embrace it, and so we can just move forward.
Thank you.
The
Crystal?
advice, yes, the advice that I would give to any young person, because when I think about what I learned about accounting over 20 years ago, it was just debits and credits, and how you're being asked to conduct risk assessments and help with IT implementations and to give advice about customer feedback and how this impacts the bottom line and the returns on investments and everything else that is, if they had taught us that in school, we'd probably run. But it is not to be afraid of it, and do not expect that you have to know all of these things up front. What I would say is to make sure you find a very good mentor, because you want to build on the knowledge of the previous persons that would have come before you. You're not coming to start from scratch or to reinvent the wheel. And the best way to do that is to learn from the persons who've come before you that are excellent at sharing knowledge, and take time to observe and to soak in as much information as possible on top of what you would have come out of school with, because this is the shortcut to you being the kind of successful auditor you like to be. If you see this person and they look like the type of auditor you would want to be, this is the person if they're willing. And you don't always have to be a direct mentor-mentee relationship, but you can observe how they handle situations and how they go about their day-to-day activities, and use this to shape and guide your own career path, and take your uniqueness and add that on top of it so you can create something special for yourself and identify what field best suits you, because accounting is a very, very wide range of activities. You can be involved in tax advice, insurance. There's no limit. There's really no limit to where you could specialize in. So you don't have to pigeonhole yourself too early. If you find that this is a particular area that does not speak to you, auditing has always been something that has brought me a great deal of joy, being able to advise persons and see businesses grow and develop, and even my own personal growth and development from experiencing so many different industries and individuals. Find the person, the industry, the area that best suits you, and learn as much from it as possible so that you can best develop your career.
Thank you so very much. And as we all acknowledge the evolving role of the accountant of today, Colin, can you comment on the evolving accounting education? Is the education helping to prepare these accountants for what is expected of them? I know we started to see a little bit of the softer side of learning being introduced, but does what exists help equip them for the immediate and the future?
I believe that ACCA in itself is taking steps towards that. I know that within the ethics and professional skills module, that they start to introduce not just candidates, but even members and affiliates who look to attend the module, that they give them little insights about data analytics and blockchain, fintech, little introductions into it. But I think what I would like to see, I guess, a bit going forward is not just for that module in itself, but maybe within the actual ACCA qualification itself, they could probably touch on it a lot more, since it is really, really relevant in the workplace itself. I mean, just I guess a few minutes ago, Sharice herself was talking about how she had more data analytics into her operation. So I believe that the seniors would benefit by getting a little more insight into that earlier in the qualification, so at least they get the knowledge aspect of that. So at least when they go into the work, now they could see how it could be practically applied there. But ACCA is normally very adept when it comes to factoring in any sorts of changes, whether that's currently going on, or even grasp it, what potentially could happen going forward. But at least on the technological front, they've been doing pretty well so far. And I was reading a report, an ACCA report, I believe the most recent report, and they were talking about the whole sustainability, accounting, and all of that. And somewhat I believe that the qualification will somewhat look to cater for that, whether the revision is coming soon or not into the future. So yeah, I would say that the qualification itself has been pretty adept at catering for any changes so far.
Good stuff. And even in this conference, we will be after lunch looking beyond the acronyms. So things like you mentioned just now, the metaverse, NFTs, DeFi, discussing the digital economy in the Caribbean. And these are all things that, as accountants, we also need to wrap our heads around and have an appreciation of the impact on our day-to-day and the businesses that you help run. Sharice, when I met you, we would have met on the UWI campus, Mona. You would have been at that time, perhaps, near completion of your degree. Having right after entered the world of work, were you prepared? Was it what you expected, or did you have a reality shock?
Okay, I entered the world of work in my final year. So I was actually a full-time student and a full-time employee. It took a lot of adjusting. But what I had expected, I wasn't shocked because I had been steadily doing my internships, my summer internships. So I was exposed to the world of work before. When I came in, I was, thrown out in the deep end, but I learned to swim very quickly. And I think now looking back at it, it is actually, when I look back at it now, I realize it really had developed my character because I have learned to time manage on my own. I am more initiative. When I go forth, I don't really sit and wait. I know I have things to be done by a particular time. I have managed client relationships, learning that much quicker because although I was a junior internal auditor, I was doing audits on my own. And therefore, I had to manage my audits from start to end to closing meetings very quickly as a student, still finishing up in my last year as a student. And now that I've moved into another role, I realized that I kind of seamlessly transitioned because when I came into this role, there was nothing new to me. And that is because I took on that challenge from early. So I am grateful that for that opportunity. I'm currently just, studying to just see how I can develop myself more. And that is where I am heading personally, just to see certifications out there, to develop myself more as a certified accountant.
Well done. And Crystal, you have juniors under you. What has that experience been like, especially amongst the new hires?
I actually right now do not have juniors under me because I was transferred to the IFRS 17 implementation project, which is a very long way of saying that I'm helping with a new standard that the insurance industry has to deal with. So I am right now the sole auditor for the Sagicor Group advising on that implementation project, which has been very interesting, but it has been more of dealing with understanding how to reach people because again, you don't have the advantage where if you're in the office, you can get up and go in someone's office and basically be a little bit of a pest to get things done by a certain deadline. But managing those relationships has been a huge part of my role aside from the accounting or the technical knowledge. And if you're unable to get persons to cooperate, to pause what they're doing, when you have absolutely no physical control over getting them to do the things you ask them to do, your ability to be able to advise starts to dwindle because you're not able to move on. So managing both the internal and the external clients with which would be the external auditors and the consultants and everything else, time management, project management, things again that they did not teach you in accounting that you have to pick up on. As Cherie said, you have to be able to pick up on those soft skills very quickly because you can be the brightest accountant, win all the top prizes and everything else, but if you're not able to handle pressure, adjust or pivot, you will sink very quickly, and many times you could drown in the workload that you have been asked to perform with. So being able to manage those things, and I wish that it was included as something that was taught because there's so many books and subject matter experts that teach these things that could help to improve the way that your work-life balance operates. That if there was anything I wish we could incorporate into the profession is to teach those soft skills a bit more, because it really does add value to accountants not having to be always thrown into the deep end. I've been hearing about being thrown into the deep end for over 2 decades now, and by now I'm hoping we incorporate some of those things into the curriculum so that students can have a much easier transition into the field and not feel daunted by the demands and the expectations that we have of them.
Thank you so very much for that. Now, you have an audience across the Caribbean joining you through the Woover app for this conference, including the presidents of the various institutes. Our own president, David Simpson, would have mentioned in his opening remarks a desire to get closer to the future of the accounting profession. He spoke about mentorship. There's some acts that he made of the institutes. What's the one thing, and I'm going to ask each of you quickly before we wrap up, that you would like to see your institutes perhaps deliver more of, with the aim to reach the younger accountant or to support that person?
Oh, okay. What I would like for my institute at least is I remembered when I had qualified, and I qualified back in 2008, and I only recently got my membership just last year. And one of the biggest hurdles for me when it came to getting my membership was basically that um, I didn't really have anyone around to assist me in how to do up the PER, the practical experience requirement. So what I would like is if whether the institute or maybe the ACCA could promote a little bit more, because I see the ACCA has started it, is that more people with the experience, the ACCA members should consider the possibility of being a remote practical experience advisor to help guide the affiliates so that you can help them with their challenge questions, help them know how to take what are their work experiences to fill out their answers so that they'll be able to go from affiliate to membership. I think that's what I'm trying to get into that as well, to be quite honest.
Thank you. Cherise, quick thoughts?
Speaking as the past president of the Association of Aspiring Accountants, UIMONA, I would really love for them to get involved at the university level to ensure that we know as future accountants what it is out there for us in terms of joining the institute. How do we do that? That is a major key, as well as mentorship. Coming in, speaking with us from various industries, accountants in various industries. I remember Crystal saying that, um, about the various industries, finding a job that you like in an industry. One of the things I remember as a high school student is that my teacher said once there's a business there, you need an accountant, and therefore an accountant is a job that will never cease to exist. So I would just like for them to expose our students to being an accountant in various industries, giving them the options and opportunities to explore before they have even left the university, so they can plan a bit more, a bit more strategically, to move forward in their career.
And very quickly, I will add that, and I know ICAC sent out an email asking persons to be mentors. So I would highly encourage all of the persons to not be a delinquent like me and to sign up for the mentorship program, because that is where I had the most value when I was at Ernst & Young, being assigned a mentor who helped to guide me and to navigate a lot of the waters aside from my technical managers and everything else, because you really need that person who helps you to understand what the profession is all about very quickly and to avoid some of the pitfalls that persons would typically fall into.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this panel, and I want to thank you very much. All three of you immediately responded positively to our ask to join this panel. It has definitely been one of the more dynamic sessions that I have hosted and that we have had, and I think a lot of what you have shared resonates very well with the ICAC as an association. And on that note, I would like to hand over to our president, David Simpson, who has some updates to share that will hopefully reflect all that you